I want you to really hear this before I say anything else. For 30 years, I drove a city bus through Detroit. The same routes, dark winter mornings, snow coming sideways across Woodward Avenue. My hands cracked on that cold steering wheel before the sun was even up. That was the whole resume. 30 years, one seat, one city. And right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm sitting on a 6th-floor balcony in a city called Da Nang on the coast of Vietnam, and there's a cup of coffee in my hand that cost me the equivalent of $2. This thick, sweet Vietnamese coffee dripping through a little metal filter, and if I lean forward just a little, I can see my K Beach, this long white sweep of sand that Forbes once called one of the most beautiful on the planet, going pink in the morning light. And the thing that wakes me at 5 most mornings, before the sun's even up over the sea, is one stubborn question. How is this the same life? How did the same man end up in both places? Because for most of those 30 years, I figured that bus seat was as high as a man like me was ever going to get, and I believed it so completely, it almost makes me angry now to think how long I carried it. So let me back up, because nothing makes sense if I just drop you in the middle. My name's Leon. I grew up on the east side of Detroit, the kind of neighborhood where the plants left and the whole block just held its breath for 30 years. My father worked the line until there wasn't a line, and my mother cleaned offices at night and came home with her feet swollen. I wasn't a good student, and I want to be honest about that, because people message me thinking you have to be somebody special to do what I did, and you don't. I got hired on with the city transit at 28, and I just never got off that bus. And I took it seriously. I want you to know that. People think driving a bus is nothing, but you're carrying somebody's grandmother to dialysis, somebody's kid to school, and you learn every face on the route, and half of them never once learned yours. That's the part that wears on a man. You're right there in the driver's seat, and people look straight through you like you're part of the machine. I married Gloria when I was 26. She worked the counter at a diner near the depot, and she had this big honking laugh that didn't match the rest of her, this small, quiet woman, and the first time I heard it, I think I just decided right then. We had one boy, Marcus. And the way our life worked never changed. I drove the early shift, she worked days, and we passed each other in the driveway like two people running a relay that never ended. We were tired, not dramatic, nobody starving, just tired in this low background way for about 3 decades. And there was this word that ran through our whole marriage, the word someday. Someday, Leon, let's see a warm ocean, the kind with the blue water in the magazines. Gloria used to clip pictures of beaches out of magazines at the doctor's office and keep them in a kitchen drawer. And I'd tease her, planning a trip we'll never take, and she'd say, "I'm keeping it ready." And she kept that dream ready her whole life and never got to spend it. Gloria got sick when she was 59, and it was fast, and everyone called that a mercy, but it felt like the floor opening up under the bus. There was a hospital room, and then there wasn't a someday anymore. I found those clippings when I cleaned out the house. There's a beach in there that looks exactly, and I mean exactly, like the one outside my window right now. I've held them up side by side, and I've stopped trying to explain it. After Gloria passed, I went back to the route in 11 days because I didn't know what else to do with my hands, and I kept driving. 62, 63, 64. Marcus was grown and out in Atlanta with a little one of his own, and the house was enormous and silent, and I'd come home from the early shift and sit at the same kitchen table where Gloria used to clip her pictures and drink coffee in a house with nobody in it. And I figured I'd drive till my knees quit, retire on Social Security and a small pension, and taper off quiet in the Detroit cold. Let me tell you what changed, because it's almost embarrassing how small it was. There was a mechanic at the depot named Ray, retired a couple years back, and he came by one afternoon to say hello, and he had this tan, this ridiculous February tan. And I said, "Ray, where the hell have you been?" And he laughed and said, "Leon, I live in Vietnam now." And I laughed too, like he'd said the moon. But he sat down and started telling me numbers, and he wasn't bragging, That's the thing. The good ones never sell you. He said his apartment near the beach ran him about $350. He said a real bowl of noodles, this local dish called mi kwang, cost $1 or $2, and a good coffee cost about $2. He said a woman came and cleaned and did his laundry, and he paid her well, and it still came to less than his old cable bill. And something happened in my chest I can only call the windshield turning into a door. That night I couldn't sleep. I went into the spare room and typed "Cost of Living Vietnam for Retired Americans," and my hands were shaking a little, and I read until the sun came up, and I felt something I almost couldn't name. It was hope, and I'd forgotten what it felt like. But hope is not the same as courage, and the courage took a while, because the second the sun went down, the reasonable voices came back, and they sounded like common sense. They sounded like my own father. You're a bus driver from Detroit. You've never even had a passport. You don't speak a word of the language. What happens when you fall, and there's nobody to find you? What would Gloria think? What would Marcus think, blowing the little you scraped together on a fool fantasy on the other side of the earth? I lived in that drawer a while, so I'm not talking down to you. I'm talking to the man I was. And I did the research. Oh, I did the research. A paper notebook, because I'm that kind of man. And I learned the hard parts too, because I made myself. Vietnam has no real retirement visa, and that golden visa people talk about still isn't a real option for a regular guy. So what you actually do is run a 90-day e-visa, $50 online, multiple entry now, and when it runs out you hop over to Bangkok or Cambodia for $100 round trip and come back. It works, but you're never fully settled, and I wrote that down honest. But every time I ran the numbers, they came out the same. Over there on my Social Security and pension, I'd live better than I ever had. Over here, I'd be counting change like always. What finally moved me wasn't bravery. It was a Tuesday. An ordinary sleeting Detroit Tuesday. And I climbed down out of the bus at the end of my shift, and my lower back just went. Right there in the depot lot. And I ended up leaning on the fender, unable to straighten up for 10 minutes until another driver came over. And standing there in the cold, I had the clearest thought of my life. Very calm. If I die on this route, I gave my whole life to a bus, and the bus will not remember me. I told Marcus over a video call, sideways, like a joke, "Your old man's been looking at Vietnam," and I braced for the worried look. Instead, he got quiet and said, "Dad, when's the last time you sounded excited about anything?" And I didn't have an answer. And then he said the thing that broke me. He said I'd rather have a happy dad on a video call than a sad one down the street. So I went and got a passport at 64, never owned one, held that blue book at the kitchen table like it was made of gold, the first document I'd ever had that wasn't a bill. And I went for a scouting month first, because I don't burn the boats on a feeling. Let me tell you the moment I knew. The taxi from the Da Nang airport, the heat hits you like an open oven, and the traffic is a river of motorbikes with no banks, whole families on one scooter, and I'm jet-lagged and overwhelmed thinking, "What have you done, Leon?" And we stop at a light, and a little girl on the back of her mother's bike, maybe 6, looks over at this big, confused gray American and just waves, this enormous grin, like she's known me her whole life, and her mother laughs and waves too, at a stranger, at a red light, and something in my chest that had been locked since Gloria died came loose. Now let me give you the honest life I built, because anybody selling you only sunsets is selling you something. I rent a 1-bedroom a short walk from the beach for $400, tile floors, big windows, this balcony. Electric runs 50, 60 in the hot months, when I give in to the air conditioning. Water's a few dollars. Fiber internet faster than anything I had in Detroit for 15. And there's a woman named Hoa who comes 4 mornings a week, and I have to talk about her right, because the title of a thing like this makes it sound like I snapped my fingers and a maid appeared, and it's nothing like that. Hoa's 41, lives down the block with her husband and 2 kids, came to me through Ray's helper, because that's how everything works here. through somebody who knows somebody. The first morning I followed her around trying to help, grabbed the other end of the sheet, and she stopped and said, in careful English, "Mr. Leon, this is my job. You make it harder." And it hit me, because for 30 years I was the one nobody thanked, the one people looked straight through, and I know exactly what it feels like to be treated like you're part of the furniture. So I made myself sit down, one of the hardest things I've done here. I pay her well above the going rate, and a bonus at the new year, and when her boy needed dental work, I covered it, and it cost me about one old cable bill, and that money is putting her daughter through her first year of nursing school. My whole month, everything in, rent and HOA and food and the little motorbike and a coffee every morning and a few beers on the beach at sunset, lands around $1,100, and my Social Security and pension cover it with room to spare. Now the hard parts, straight. The dry season heat flattens you. The rains from about September flood the streets in 20 minutes. The visa runs never fully stop being a headache, and the language, the tones, defeated me completely. I'm a clumsy old study. Healthcare surprised me the good way. A chest scare a year in got me a doctor in 20 minutes. An X-ray, an EKG, antibiotics, the whole thing about $60 cash, and I carry a plan now for a little over $100 a month. But for anything truly serious, a lot of folks fly to Bangkok, and you'd be a fool to ignore that at my age. And there's a loneliness that comes in waves, nights on this beautiful balcony as alone as I've ever been, missing Gloria so bad I can't breathe, because the view doesn't fix that. You bring your grief with you. It just gets to sit somewhere prettier. People ask if I have regrets, and I've got exactly one. It's not that I came, it's that I waited. I want to reach back through time and grab that tired man frozen to a steering wheel on a dark Detroit morning and shake him and tell him the ocean doesn't check your driving record. It doesn't care that you sat in that seat for 30 years. So if you're out there tonight, tired the way I was tired for 3 decades, with a head full of reasonable voices telling you to stay put and be grateful, I'm just one man on a balcony with a $2 coffee. But I'll tell you what nobody told me. You're allowed. You're actually allowed to go. It's going gold over the water now. In a little while, Hoa's husband is going to putter by and honk hello, and Ray's coming up for some of the noodles I learned to make, and I'm going to sit here a while longer with my coffee, in the life I almost talked myself out of. The bus driver from Detroit, 6 floors up, looking out at the ocean Gloria always wanted to see. I carried you here, I tell her. We finally got to our someday, and I promise you, whoever you are, you're allowed to go too.